Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today. It's so beautiful out there. What a beautiful sunny day. We're getting closer and closer to warmer weather. I'm so excited. We are very pleased today to have the Mayor of Buchanan, Mr. Sean Denison. We're learning, did I say that correctly? Thank you. He's going to just share with us how he became a mayor, what was his ambitions, some of his vision, working with the city. And feel free to ask questions. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm not very good at talking about myself, so I hope you have lots of questions or brought a good book. I don't know how I'm going to fill an hour, so hopefully you do have lots of questions. My name is Sean Denison. My wife and I live on the west side by the middle school. My wife.
Speak a little louder, please.
Sure, sorry. My wife is a principal at Ottawa Elementary School. She's been teaching in Buchanan for 22 years. She taught first grade for about 18 years, and then she became a principal. And we have a daughter who's in 7th grade at the middle school, Sydney. So my wife has been teaching here, like I said, for 20 years, but we've only lived in the city for about 8 years. We lived here for a long time. We were trying to find a home here, knowing that my wife was going to be a principal. And it was hard to find a place to live here, to be completely honest. So it took some time, but we finally found a place and moved here in 2013. And you know, I went to college and got a degree in political science. I'd always had an interest in wanting to try and find a role in serving the community that I lived in. So once we got established here, I started attending city meetings and kind of following the happenings, and saw some things that I wasn't really all that excited about, and I felt like the city might be wasting some money in places and doing some things I didn't agree with. So I decided to run for city commission. And then the city commission actually chose me last November. You don't run for mayor in the city of Buchanan. The city commission appoints you as mayor. So I was lucky enough to have the city commission appoint me as mayor last November. And with the shutdown and all the strange COVID happenings, we haven't been having in-person meetings. We've been doing everything online. So there haven't been many events for me to be mayor. So this is one of the first ones, so thanks for having me again. So I'm not from Buchanan originally. I was raised in Pennsylvania, the northeastern part of Pennsylvania. And my wife is from Pennsylvania also. She's from the southern part of Pennsylvania. And we met right in the middle of Pennsylvania in college. I attended Lock Haven University, which was a state teachers college. I had every intention of being a teacher. And then I had a class called Children's Literature with a professor named June Ames, who told me that I should get a real man's job and be a truck driver or a welder. So I did not become a teacher after that conversation, and I thank her for it every day, because teachers work way too hard. But things worked out in the end, so it all worked out. Let's see, what else? I really hope you have a lot of questions, because that took all of 5 minutes. I know Norma has questions, so I'm hoping that. So there's a lot, if you've been watching the news, there's been a lot going on in the city lately. There's a lot of activity, a lot of new business, a lot of jobs being created. We just recently got done with plans for some economic development opportunities where hopefully we can build some new homes on some empty lots that we have in the city. The city, over the last few years, the city has acquired a little more than 40 empty properties the city has bought. Empty lots or rundown lighted buildings. And so we're trying to figure out what to do with those so that we can get them back on the tax roll. And it makes our community look nicer when there's a home there or a nice home. So part of that plan was to try and figure out what to do with those empty properties. I don't know if any of you saw the Andrews University project that we just had it last Wednesday. We put on a presentation down at the Common where we showed the public some of the ideas that we're putting forth. So it's all very exciting, and it's on the city's website if you get a chance to look at it.
Tell us what the responsibilities of a mayor.
Sure. Well, I really don't have any. Luckily, the City of Buchanan is run by a city manager, and she reports to the city commission. As mayor, I really don't have any powers over any of the other city commissioners. We all have the same voting power. I'm just kind of the pretty face of the commission, I guess. Really, the city is managed day to day by the city manager. Now, we're really lucky, and last year we hired a new city manager. Her name's Heather Grace. She came from a city in northern Michigan where she was city manager. And part of the reason that she became city manager, I think, is she came and visited and realized just how nice Buchanan is, and she has 2 young children, so she wanted them to go to school here. And then shortly after she arrived, we got the recognition as the nicest place in America, so she knew she'd made the right decision. And she's very, very good at what she does. She has a law degree, and
McDonald's coffee.
she's just she's young too. She's in her mid-30s, so she's very in tune with the internet and how to make things work more efficiently and quicker. So we're really looking forward to good things from her. She recently hired a new community development director. One of the things, when I first started attending meetings in 2018, one of the things I noticed was that the city didn't have anyone who was out selling our community, who was out promoting it and trying to draw business in and trying to attract business and trying to attract jobs. We just didn't have anyone that did that. She recently created a new position and brought in someone named Richard Murphy. He had the same job in Michigan City, Indiana, and now he works for the City of Buchanan. And he's done some really amazing things since he's been here. He's only been here 4 months, maybe. But so it's a really exciting time in Buchanan. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of new jobs and a lot of interest in the city. They get calls every day about businesses wanting to know what buildings are available. So it's just really exciting time. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On a new waste treatment plant, how big a city are they planning on that handling or taking care of the people? The
Well,
waste treatment plant they're building?
Sure.
How big a city?
Well, it's big enough for our city. It's built for our city.
I know.
So I can't tell you exactly how much, what it's rated for. I know that they built in some growth in case the city does grow a little, obviously, so it's overbuilt.
Do you know if they'll have an open house?
That's a good question. I think they probably should.
Because my father, after World War II, learned how to run that. He operated that for a number of years, and he broke Clyde Weaver in on it. And then my dad went to Niles, and he worked at Clark Equipment for 17 years. He said the only thing he came out of there with was hemorrhoids, and he had to pay for those to take care of himself. He had no benefits.
Right.
But he had to take care of the waste treatment plant, and he had to read the water meters 3 times a year. He had to walk to town to do that.
Oh, wow.
So I'm kind of interested in.
Sure.
I know at one time they came over from Notre Dame, a bunch of professors, and they couldn't get over how well he'd landscaped and everything else. And I'm kind of curious to see, because he ended up running different waste treatment plants.
Sure.
And did anybody ask anything about all the places selling pot in town? Do they really don't have that much money coming in from that?
Well, they have been busy. They do have a lot of customers. You can tell by the amount of traffic that has increased, especially on Friday afternoons, it seems like. I believe they're all doing very well, actually.
Okay, another question about this new one, just opened up at where the old bank used to be, Don.
Yeah.
They're awful big, but they were so late getting started. They were started a long time before the rest of them. I wondered if they had a problem getting their
They had
license.
they had everything in place, and then they had a change in ownership. Right before they were set to open, they had kind of a rearrangement of the ownership and who was going to be CEO. They've just recently taken care of that, and now they're selling medical marijuana only at this point. But they're in the process of getting their recreational license.
I know my wife, before she passed away, had problems with her shoulder. The muscles were so sore, and she did get some ointment that did help for a time, but then it got to the point where it didn't work either, but some of it does work, I'll say
So
that.
that's what I've heard really good things about some of the ointments and some of the oils and stuff that you apply right to sore muscles. Yeah.
Yeah, at the center, we've had a field trip. We both had two of the dispensaries come in and speak. And then we actually, last month, we did a field trip and people met downtown at Canna Vista. And they had a personal tour and was given information. So if you are interested in learning more, just let me know so I can reach out to somebody or we can have another class.
I'd like to go through the one
I was
down
wondering,
here.
I
7
didn't-
inches?
It looks like they put a lot of money into one
Yeah.
down
Showed
here.
all of the things that Andrew, the group had come up with. But what I'm really wondering, since we're right in the middle of all of this water, and I was involved years and years ago on the very first grant that we put together. Don Carbon was on it, Mr. Marzita was on it, we had a great team. The two of them walked away from it because they said it was impossible to get anything through to the city fathers. But one of the things that was so important that we were trying to bring together was the dual facilitating of the building that we wanted to put up. But more importantly, we were interested in solar powering everything so we would get more breaks as a city from the federal government. And I just wondered if any of that was brought up in all of these discussions.
Actually, no, there wasn't much discussion about solar power.
It's very important,
I hate these
especially when
things.
you're
I
in the
can't
middle of
understand
all of
half
this
of it.
water.
Sure, I totally agree.
I just wondered about that because I missed it.
Yeah. Well, it is online. I think there's a link on the city website if you'd like to watch the presentation. It was taped.
I know there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, my granddaughter told me. And she brought over all the pictures on her phone and we looked at them. But I didn't know if anything came up about the.
Yeah, no, there wasn't actually anything in there about solar.
It's just important because it would save so much money with the government.
Sure, I agree. Norma, do you have a question?
Yes. Would you talk about the necessity for people taking advantage of the census? It does help the city with that. Would you explain?
Sure. The census is over now, but we did push it very hard because it's extremely important in the way money gets dispersed to not only states, but then they break it down by county and by regions. So it was very important. I mean, it helps with everything from school lunches to dial-a-ride to money for in just about everything you can think of. So I think some people find it invasive, thinking somebody's going to come knocking on my door asking me where I live, who I live with, and all that. But it is really important in figuring out how that money gets dispersed. So I'm always trying to get people. I was trying very hard to get people to participate in the census, and actually, I think we had a really good turnout in the census this year. Yes, sir.
Also, on electric voice up here, is that permanently, do you know if it's permanently off limits to ever build a house on? Is there some reason they haven't sold that?
Well, it is for sale. So we've considered a couple of times purchasing it, what would be required. Part of the issue with that building is the fact that there are extremely thick concrete floors that would be nearly impossible to remove. They had giant brake presses in there that they built these very deep concrete floors under. And so it's going to be, you know, in order to remove the building completely, it's going to be extremely expensive to remove. More than likely, what would have to happen would be you just knock the building down and build over what's in the ground.
I know over the years, they said that, the city or the government said it's permanently contaminated, they can't build some buildings there or something.
Right. There is some contamination on those grounds.
And I know at the time, I worked there 46 years in polishing, and the plating department was next door, and they had a treatment plant going, well, it was 3 barrels of bacteria. They were injecting that into the ground, and Everett Smith was the one that was over that, and I talked to him before I retired in '96. And he said at one time they figured it would take 20 to 30 years to clean that up. And yet he said that the way it was going, that they were coming in from Germany to check how they were treating that, because they figured within 2 or 3 years it would be cleared up. So I don't know if if it ever got any worse. Of course, they've probably checked it since then. It's probably
Well, I think they check it regularly, but I don't believe there's anything happening currently to clean the ground right now.
I know I was kind of a photographer for the plant up there, and while they were cleaning it up and all, I was taking pictures of them hauling out the waste, and then I was watching them bring in all the dirt, and you can't believe how much, I'd like to know how much it really cost them to take care of that, because it couldn't have been cheap.
Right.
I think they probably did a very good job. I know I had a cousin who used to play down there in the pond. They had a contaminated pond. He said the frogs looked okay. So
Don't eat the fish.
that was it.
Question over.
Yes, ma'am.
Has the city received any money from the cannabis sales?
So, we did receive one check. We received our first check, which we weren't expecting. To be honest, the state is not very good at giving the city money that it is supposed to be owed. But then we did get a check for $84,000. And that was based on 3 of the establishments that we had operating. I think now we have 5. So hopefully the next check will be even larger. But that $84,000 was based on 3 of the dispensaries that were operating during 2020, I believe.
Is that money designated for particular things?
So you have to spend it on certain things. We're fine. You know, it's strange, and it sounds ridiculous, but this is all new to everybody. So I think the state is kind of making up the rules as they go, it seems like sometimes. So they gave us the money, and then you find out a couple days later that, okay, so here's what you're allowed to do with that money. So we're still trying to figure out how it can be used, but there are certain things it can be used for, and there are certain things that it cannot be used for. For instance, it's not allowed to be used to lower taxes, which seems a bit ridiculous to me. It seems like if we as a community are taking in these dispensaries and then we get money from that, then we should be able to use it the way we want. I mean, that's my opinion, but the state has different ideas. So we're still trying to figure out how we're going to be using the money. Our police department is kind of in need of another police officer, actually. We'd like to have somebody downtown a lot more. Not because we have any issues, really, just kind of to have more of a police presence downtown. I've asked Chief Gaines repeatedly if the dispensaries, I mean, one of the concerns when we allowed marijuana to come in was that there was some concern about vagrancy or people just hanging out in the parks or, people just hanging out on the streets up to no good. And I've asked repeatedly, have we seen anything like that since they've opened? And the answer has been an adamant no. There hasn't been an increase in crime. There hasn't been an increase in vagrancy. It's actually been really good. And when I talk to the business people downtown about the customers who are going in and out, they say everyone's very friendly, they're very nice, so it's been a good thing.
About that leper voice, there was just an article not too long ago in the Leader. I think it's called the EPA, I don't know, I cut it out, because they've been doing a 5-year study on that building. and different things, and supposedly that was
Doesn't help.
finished. So,
Sorry.
you know, I don't know what they're going to do with it. My home isn't very far from that, but
Sure.
I've wondered myself, especially when I saw them breaking ground for another new building. I
Across
wondered
from
why
Electric
they
Voice?
can't use that building,
Right.
you know, but that's not the way they do it.
Well, the ground, if you're talking about the new building they're building across the street
Yeah.
from Electric Voice, that's the new home of the Scarecrows.
I realize that.
And I agree with you, Electric Voice is an eyesore, and it's kind of a waste of property. I mean, we don't
Yeah,
have
that's
that
right.
much property to use in the city anyway, and it's taking up a good chunk of it, and it's, not only is it an eyesore, but it's actually dangerous. I mean, I
It
worry
is.
about kids getting in there,
A lot
you
of
know, there's-
children around there,
Right,
ball
so-
games and stuff.
it's on our list, believe me, we
Yeah.
have a list
One
of
man offered
properties
him
that,
$1 million for electric
that need
voice
to
up
be
there at one
addressed.
time, the city is
It's
worth
right
$3
there at
million,
the
wouldn't
top.
sell it to him, now they can't give it
Hopefully
away.
that study was finished. But I have one more question. Are there still police officers doing two jobs? Like the city manager was the chief of police. I mean, you know, being a police officer seems to be enough responsibility without having two jobs. And I wondered if there are any more still doing that.
No.
No?
So one of the things, myself and Mark Whedon and Cameron Downey, when we became commissioners, you know, we weren't excited about the fact that our city manager was our police chief. Because I agree with you, both jobs are full-time jobs. So one of the things that we did was, we took that away from Bill Marks and made Tim Gaines our police chief. And he's done an excellent job, by the way. I don't know if you're all familiar with Tim, but he's a great police chief, and he's a good human being, so we're really proud to have him. And to answer the only other policeman who actually kind of does something else would be Harvey Burnett. Harvey Burnett is a sergeant in our police force, but he does work at Andrews University as a professor. But other than that, I mean, he's one of our.
And what about, the one that's head of the maintenance department?
JT.
He's no longer,
JT Ackerson is going to be retired, actually.
He's what?
He's retired,
he's retired from the police force?
from the city, I
From the
believe,
city.
here, very, very shortly. Yeah.
Good.
So, yeah.
Are there any plans for fixing some of the streets in town?
Sure, so, one of the things, going back to this gentleman's, remarks, our wastewater facility that we have now was built in the late 30s, early 40s. And it has a lifespan of about 75 years, so it is more than ready to be replaced, which is why we're building a new one. But all the pipes that are underground, especially going down Front Street, and then if you turn and head north on Redbud, that little intersection there, a lot of those pipes are still clay pipes, and those are from the 1930s also. About 3 years ago, we had a study done where they came in with cameras and went through the entire city's pipes to see what kind of shape they were in, and there was a lot of them that are deteriorating. So in 2023, we're actually, prepare yourselves, because Front Street downtown is going to be completely removed in order to redo, the pipes that are deteriorated. But then we have to, so we've been planning kind of accordingly, knowing that we have to do that. We've been kind of holding off on fixing this street or that street because we know that we're going to tear them up in 2023 completely. So, so it's kind of a chess game, we want to fix as many streets as we can, but we don't want to fix this one because we know in 2 years we're going to end up tearing it up. So we've been trying to, fix the streets that aren't going to get torn up. The rest of them we're kind of going to have to deal with for the next year or so until that project starts.
That's good to know, because when I drove down there a couple weeks ago, I really appreciate the dispensaries here, and I like the people that work in them. However, I was thinking they could all get together and donate, and we could fix the street. So now that I understand that plan, it wouldn't make any sense to do that now.
Sure, and that's why we've been holding
Yeah,
off.
that
And then
makes
actually
sense.
last year we were able to fix Shermer Parkway. We repaved Shermer Parkway. We repaved 4th Street from the city limits over by the middle school all the way, almost to Moccasin, I think. But Fourth Street it was an old concrete street that they had, because of the traffic from Clark Equipment in days gone by, they had made the streets out of concrete, and the federal government was big at giving grants. So when that street was done a long time ago, it was made out of concrete, which is kind of an unusual thing. They don't do that anymore, really. So that was an extremely expensive street to fix. But we were able to do it last year. We were able to recover that one, which is, if you've driven up and down it lately, it's much nicer than it used to jar your teeth when you drove up and down.
Now, a lot of these old pipes, I understand sometimes there's a way of putting a pipe inside the old pipe. Is that what they intend to do, do you know?
No, actually, we're gonna start from scratch. We're gonna remove all the old
Take it
pipes.
all out.
I mean, it was really an interesting, when they did the cameras in the pipes, it was very interesting to see. You wouldn't think that a sewer project would be as interesting as it was, but, you can see where different utilities, they bore underground now. Instead of digging a trench, they'll just bore underground. And you can see in several places where they bored right through city pipes, with either cable or fiber or whatever else. But the pipes are honestly in such disrepair that they have to just be completely removed.
Well, I know up on the north side of town, I lived up there when I was in school, and they didn't get sewer or water till after World War II. And I can remember right out in front of our house, it caved in and it covered a man and he died. And I can remember it used to pump a lot of water on the back porch. You had natural gas and electric, but the rest of it, you could live in the country.
Wow.
But that's, people up there don't realize, their whole town don't realize what it is if you gotta pump water by hand, if you didn't live out in the country at some time.
I hear you.
That was the next thing to it, you heated with coal or wood.
Yeah. I had to pump water, believe it or not.
I also just want to ask you a question about the Front Street and the businesses. When we're fixing those roads, the Front Street, are they gonna close up the businesses?
Well, it's gonna be a tough.
And use the back door?
Well, that's what we're gonna have to try and come up with plans on how to, and that's why, and very soon, we're gonna be starting these conversations with the businesses on how to get customers into their businesses, and because it literally is going to go from storefront to storefront on Front Street. We're gonna tear out the sidewalks and redo everything at one time. So it's going to be a challenge, but it's gonna be worth it in the end.
Will the utilities be put underground instead of having?
Well, that's our plan. We're having those discussions now. I think so. I think that's kind of the way of the future, is to put everything underground. But we're trying to decide about high-speed internet and gas lines and doing all of that in one shot. So it's a huge project, and it's going to take a lot of coordination. So
How long do they expect that from beginning to end?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
And but I know, everyone knows how much of a disruption that's going to be. So it's going to be as quickly as possible.
Where's the money going to come from to do this?
We've applied for USDA grants to fix our water pipes.
How do we pay back those grants?
Well, a lot of the grants, a portion of it we don't have to pay back. It's government money, federal government money. We pay for it with taxes and everything else. But, nothing's free, so, but a lot of those grants, you don't have to pay back.
When will the project with the wastewater plant be finished?
I believe that's supposed to be done this fall. That's another tricky one, and I'm not sure how they're doing it yet, but they have to switch from the existing plant to the new plant. We're going to keep the old plant, actually. I don't know if you know, but we treat the water that comes from the landfill, we currently treat with our wastewater plant. And that's a revenue stream. We charge the landfill to treat the water that comes out of the landfill. And don't quote me, but I think at one point we had made like $400,000 treating water from the landfill. So we're going to continue to use the old wastewater plant to treat that water. And then there's other issues like, I don't know, you know, the news last year, I think Three Oaks was having issues with their distillery was kind of overpowering their wastewater treatment plant. And so they've been looking for a place where they can take that water and have it treated. And so we're hoping that, you know, not only Journeyman's and Three Oaks, but other breweries and things of that nature can bring their water here, and it'll continue to be a revenue source for us to treat that water for them. So the goal is to switch over to the new plant hopefully this fall, and then keep the old one running just to make money for the city, treating water from private companies or the landfill. Or
I don't understand how they transfer water from landfill to Buchanan. I mean, trucks or underground or
Underground.
underground?
Yeah. And you know, we're lucky that we just happen to be closer to the landfill than Niles, so they pay us to treat their water. So it's been a good revenue source, honestly.
You know, though, that old, plant down there, it's disgusting the way that's been kept.
Well,
That is just disgusting.
it's
That
way
needs to
past
be
its,
cleaned up.
it's way past its prime, number one. And they have, you know, I've only been there one time, and it's not a glorious job by any means, but they work very hard. It's almost comical. They'll fix this pipe that's leaking, and then, you know, seriously, it's like an I Love Lucy show. She'll fix this one, and this one will start leaking, and it'll fix that one, and that one will start leaking again. And it's been that way for years. So this new wastewater plant that we have is desperately needed, and I know that the workers who work at the plant cannot wait for it to become operational. So, that's me.
On 4th Street at Redbud,
Yeah.
where that was widened,
Yes.
it's supposed to be straight,
Yes.
but it isn't. But why did they change the turn lane?
Yeah.
To left turn only up on Redbud, is that because of the racing stuff or what? I mean, that to me didn't make sense.
I have no idea. And it's funny that you bring that up, because that is part of the reason that I ran for city commission to begin with. I attended a meeting where that was brought up the very first time to the public, and it was brought to the commission, and there was no blueprints, there was no traffic studies, there was nothing. They were just told, we want to do this, this is what we think it's going to cost, and they all voted yes, without seeing any plans or the way it was going to look, and I found that to be outrageous. So I asked them not to do it, they did it anyway, and I decided to run, because that, to me, when they voted yes for it, it was supposed to be $78,000 to make that intersection straight, and it turned out being about $140,000 in the end.
And it's not.
And it doesn't look any different. So,
Except that turn lane.
Yes, it does.
right.
So can that be changed? Can that turn lane be changed to, that left lane be left turn?
You know, I don't know what the issue was. There was some sort of issue with the light, or the way the light was changing after they did the intersection, and then they changed it back to the way that it was originally anyway, which just goes to show you that
Yeah, 'cause
it was
if
not
you're-
well thought out.
If you're, you know, I mean, a lot of people go into town. I mean, and if you're going straight, you really have to like change lanes to go straight.
Right.
And then you're sitting there, you can't turn right on red because there's a car in front of you waiting to go straight.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense, and it seems to me there ought to be some way to redo it.
Right. Well, I would agree with you that it doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know the answer to how to make
So
the intersection.
who makes a decision on how the lanes, is there a city, what city
Well, I think, you know, I think the state has certain rules about the way traffic lanes and traffic lights have to work.
But isn't that a city
I
decision?
don't believe so. You believe it is?
Yes,
I honestly,
I do,
Because we live here.
because there needs to be something brought to the city. I have never seen a state person walk in and discuss or heard. When you mentioned the blueprint, when you mentioned the state just come in and told you change that road? No.
no, not at all. No, actually, so that intersection was going to get new traffic lights and it was gonna get new ADA compliant, you know, on the curbs, they were gonna make them ADA compliant. That was going to get done anyway. That was going to happen at that intersection. But then the city commission decided, well, while we're at it, why don't we tear down the trophy shop, which is that little brown building to the northwest? Why don't we tear it?
It was an eyesore.
Right, so they decided to tear that down and then try and move 4th Street over to align better with River Street, which doesn't look any different to me. But that came with a bill of $78,000. And then, go figure, when they started tearing into the street, they realized there were certain plumbing things there, they had to do some extra work, and it turned out to be about $138,000, I think is what it came to. Which at the time was a good chunk of our city savings. Which I just thought was a horrible use of taxpayer money to change an intersection that now looks exactly like it did to begin with, really, and doesn't operate any differently. So I would agree with you. I agree with you completely.
It's like sometimes they're fixing things that aren't broken.
I would agree with that.
I agree with that.
That light's been working like that a long time.
That light.
Right. Well, and that's what that was my argument was. You know, so what? So we have a quirky intersection. What town doesn't have one quirky intersection?
Spend the money someplace else.
Yeah, where it's needed.
something,
It's small enough, no, really, it's not
I
really.
agree.
you know.
I agree.
And I'm sorry, I might have spoke out of turn about that water plant. I was thinking more of the maintenance. Is that all together down there, the maintenance department?
No,
That's
the
what I
DPW
think is so disgusting.
The DPW building is over near the dog park. Is that what you were referring to?
No, I'm referring, I'm not sure where the dog park is. I don't have a dog and I don't go to the dog park and I didn't promote it. However, I'm talking about the maintenance department that's down by where all the ballparks are.
Yes.
And I have been down there several times because we were trying to get the city manager to make the gentlemen that mow keep their guards down, especially if they're in a place where there's children or there's elderly people walking. And my husband, who had worked for the Indiana State Correctional Institution, knew about the OSHA laws and everything. And he said they were going against OSHA and making it very dangerous for the children walking around. The elderly people are walking more now, and it's too dangerous. And there was a rock went through my window. They mow across this, I live on Red Run, but Hobart Street is there. So they mow that, and it's beautiful. I mean, I'm so grateful they do. I used to have to mow it if I wanted to mow it. But a rock came through and broke 2 windows. I called the police, but of course you can't prove it came from them, but the guards were always up. In fact, they took them off. I know why they do, because they can get it done faster. But it's very dangerous and it could cause a very expensive lawsuit. However, the city manager, bless his heart, he told them to put those guards back on there. Of course, they never did, you know, and now they just have them tied up. But you just gotta make sure you're in the house and whatever when they're mowing, because it's dangerous.
Well,
But I was down there enough to know, it looks like a dump.
well, so there's another building that is way past its prime. It has cracks in the walls, it leaks water.
Yes, it's terrible.
And we're in the middle of getting quotes for a new building. So that building is going to come down hopefully soon, and it's going to be replaced with a new building for the DPW.
That would be.
I mean, in the past 3 or 4 years, we've spent probably close to $3 million on new equipment, new trucks, and they're in that building that literally could come down with a heavy snow. So it's a priority for us to get a new building to house the equipment that we bought.
Because there's new mowers too.
No, yeah, and we bought, I was going to say, when you were talking about mowers, we have bought
Yeah,
some new mowers.
we bought all new mowers, then they tied the guards up.
I'll look into that.
So, it's interesting. And they would not respect the city manager. I mean, I had to back away because I was really angry. And he was supposed to be a cop. So that really had me going. So it was better to stay home.
I noticed the bank, the other side of the police department, is the city gonna do anything with that to expand the police department?
Well, so Edgewater Bank is moving out. Edgewater Bank
Yeah,
is
Edgewater.
becoming part of United Federal, so they're gonna move next door. And that part of the building is gonna be vacant. And for the last couple of weeks, we've been discussing, do we want to try and find another banking institution to put in there? Do we want to try, what do we want to try and do? So I think we're at the point where we're going to use it for some sort of city something, but we're not sure what. There's been discussions about moving, if you've had to go down to City Hall to pay water bills, there's been some discussion about moving that portion up there so that people could just use the drive-through and pay for their water bills or, pay their utility bills. Or if they have a question, they can just use the drive-through. So I don't know if you've ever been in Edgewater Bank, but that portion of the building is actually pretty small. There's not a lot of room in there. So we've also talked about just expanding the police station and making the police station a little bit larger. Right now, our police officers share cubicles. So this shift leaves, but then the next shift comes in, they're sitting in the same cubicles, they're sharing desks. I mean, it is really.
Because there was talk, I mean, at one of the commission meetings I went to, there was talk about the need for the police department to have a bigger space, or that them go in with somebody else, and when they were talking about building this great big new building somewhere, I forget
Right.
what that was all about, but.
There has been some discussion about building a new municipal building for
Yeah.
City Hall
Okay.
and the police
That
and
was what it was,
the
yeah.
fire department. I'm not a fan of that personally. I just don't think that, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's.
Well, I think we're in a time period now where there's more need for reusing space
I agree.
than, going.
My grandmother used to say, use it up, wear it out, make it work or do without it.
Oh.
But I agree with you. I mean, I think we should use what we have. One of the things that I've found is that for whatever reason, and I'm not trying to blame anyone, but there hasn't been a lot of maintaining the things that we already have in the city. We haven't taken very good care of our property, of our equipment. The Ross Sanders house is going to waste. It's just sitting there deteriorating. So that needs to be fixed. There's been talk actually about adding on to the back of the Ross Sanders house and making that City Hall again. I mean, the City Hall building is fine. It actually does what it's supposed to do, but it really is in need of a lot of work. It has some pretty serious structural issues. I mean, there's cracks in the walls, the roof leaks. I was in there for a meeting the other morning and the air conditioner wouldn't shut off and our teeth were chattering. It was freezing in there. And so it has all sorts of issues that and we're trying to figure that, like I said before, it's kind of a chess game. We're trying to figure out, what makes the most sense, because we have the Edgewater Bank building. We're thinking about doing something with the Ross Sanders building. Does it make sense to sell the current City Hall? Because that could actually be a really valuable piece of property if someone wanted to tear that building down and build something there. So there's all sorts of ideas on the table on how to move things around and what makes the most sense and what's the most economical and what is the most efficient.
But there's money isn't there money in the budget for maintenance? I mean, isn't that one of the?
There is,
line
but it just doesn't go very far. I mean, we do
Oh.
have some money. Unfortunately, we're so far behind, and again, I don't want to blame anyone, but we're so far behind on maintaining that now we're at a point where it's not even maintained anymore. We need to rebuild some of these things. Like the DPW has to be rebuilt. That's $1 million building probably by the time it's done.
Which one did you say I missed that?
The DPW, our Department of Public Works building that you were talking
Oh, yeah.
about, where we keep all of our trucks and
Okay.
equipment.
Is it true that the TCF bank is moving, closing, moving out?
I have heard that rumor that that it's, and more than, I think it's probably more than a rumor. I'm pretty sure that that bank will be closing down. That used to be where we did the city did their banking, and we've switched now to Honor Credit Union because when they switched to TCF, which I'm not familiar with as a bank, they were very strange about how we were allowed to deposit our money, and we had to do it in person, and it was just, they were kind of difficult to deal with, and I don't think they're going to be in town very long. I think they're
That's a
probably.
very big piece of property there.
They do have and that's another very valuable piece of property that's going to be available soon, with a lot of parking. They have a very large parking lot.
And it's being bought, I mean, it's bought out again now, so it's gonna be, it's merging into, I forget what the big bank is, it's gonna be.
Is that, did TCF get bought by someone else?
Yeah, after 1 year of just being bought, I mean, buying.
Sure. Yes, Mama.
When we put a new place in Buchanan, such as the dog park, I've talked about signs before. How do you get information to go? What is the address of it?
What? I'm sorry.
The dog park.
Oh, I don't know the address of the dog park, to be completely honest.
I don't think it has an address.
It's behind, it is down where all the ballparks are in the DPW building. So unfortunately, you do have to drive by the DPW building and then way into the back to visit the dog park. And it does need better signs, I would agree with you.
Yes, that gives me no information to
Right,
tell
right.
John Doe on the street.
No, we probably need to do it. So that's another thing. One of the things that we are working on is a new website for the city, because our website is kind of a mishmash of way too much information. It's hard to navigate. You can't find what you're looking for. And it hasn't been updated in years and years, so that's another thing. But I think that's probably, the dog park is probably something that needs better signage, and it is hard to find. We go there occasionally, but
Listen for the barks.
I get the talk, I don't.
You'll lose yourself in those big holes out there.
it's, yes,
You lose your
it is
car.
pretty
when you
rough.
Are
go
there
down
sinkholes?
there. There is,
There are
there
some
is.
big
They-
potholes.
you know, where the-
I'm sorry?
Other sinkholes down there?
Well, it's just,
It's,
that's
Just
the
means
the
something.
creek area,
I'll
and
stay away from that
the
area.
water table is very high, and it's just, with our big trucks coming in and out of there, we do tear up the ground quite a bit, and it's just continually full of holes. I mean, they're always filling them up, but like a week later, there's potholes again, so.
Did the city decide on the city manager having to live in the city? Was there ever a
Sure,
decision on that?
yeah, that's illegal. So, I know there's a lot of debate
Yeah,
on.
right,
So,
yeah.
a lot of debate on, are we gonna make sure that, when we started looking for a new city manager, the question was, are we going to make them live in the city?
Right.
Because a lot, and at first I thought, I want somebody paying the same amount of taxes as I do. I want somebody who has skin in the game, who's, got the same responsibilities and has to do what I have to do if they're going to work here. But then the more I thought about it, if we found a candidate who lived in South Bend, say, for example, and they were established there, their kids were going to school there, but they were extremely talented, I wouldn't want to make them move and disrupt their entire life just to come here. If they're very talented, you know what I mean? I mean, if it's someone we really want, I'd rather have a very talented person than have someone living in the city.
So you would be in favor of that too for like?
I would. And actually, so when we hired Heather, and in the end, it doesn't really matter because making them live here is illegal.
Yeah, right.
So when we hired the new city manager, we let her know that we really did kind of want her to live here. We weren't gonna make her, but we really did want her to live here. And it happened so quickly. She started looking for a home in the city and there weren't any houses. I mean, there's houses that are either under 100,000 or houses that are $1 million in Buchanan, it seems like. It seems very hard to find homes in the middle. So she did her best. She came to town on a weekend and looked at the houses that were for sale, and she ended up buying a house just outside the city limits. I mean, I could throw a rock and hit the boundary, but she did her best. I mean, she does live here. I mean, I'm not gonna hold against her that she doesn't live in the city limits.
Well, she's gonna she's gonna hang out. And
Oh, absolutely, and she's gonna spend her money here, and her kids are going to school here, and she's very, very vested in the community, so.
Where does she get her ideas to bring business in Buchanan?
Sure, well, the commission helps. We try to give her ideas as well as the new community development director that I mentioned before. He also has, because he's done this before in Michigan City, he has a broad scope of contacts that he works with. Real estate developers, investors, and so we all kind of work together on what makes the most sense. What should we do with this property? Should we let
Well, I
somebody?
know it's difficult trying to bring business into Michigan, period.
Right now, it's a really difficult time right now, especially for restaurants.
How much does Buchanan receive revenue with the marijuana?
So we don't get anything. I mean, I've heard rumors around town that that the city receives money every time they make a sale. That's not necessarily true.
It shouldn't be, we don't get it from Harding's.
So, no, I agree. So, there was, when marijuana first started, it was all medical sales, and there was an excise tax on that. So when you paid for it, and that excise tax went to pay for, the first thing the state wanted to do was take that money and use it for certain things. One of them was PTSD research for military veterans. Some of it was for roads, some of it was for education, and all those different things had to be checked before the rest of the money went back to the community that had dispensaries. So we had to pay all those bills first, which the state did, and that's where we got that $84,000. So we do get that money, but like I said, it goes through the state first, so it's always kind of a question mark if we're gonna get it, when we're gonna get it. But the idea that we're getting something off of every sale wouldn't be true.
We have these beautiful signs welcoming us, everyone to Buchanan, they're just beautiful.
Thank you.
But when you leave, I think it would be nice, maybe you could bring it up, or I could make an effort to go to the meeting and bring it up. But it would be nice if we have so many artists in Buchanan, it'd be nice to have a thank you on the back of the sign. It's empty.
Right.
So I think that would be,
That's a great idea.
visiting the nicest place in America, whatever. But it would just be nice to have a thank you on the back of every one of those signs, because
Well, that's a good idea.
they're blank and.
You did have an article, like she says, if you think about Reader's Digest, they said this is the nicest little city in the country to live in. So just put something like that on the back.
Yeah.
You're at least just leaving the nicest little city in the country, something like that, I don't know. But I mean, it's something to be proud of, that you've lived here all these years. And we've recognized the person that wrote that ought to be commended. I'm sure he has. And I don't know him personally, but if anybody knows him, tell him that I know there's a lot of people that really think a lot of what he wrote and got us our recognition in the Reader's Digest.
Sure. Yeah. No, that was a really big, that was a big thing for Buchanan. It was pretty amazing. But I like that idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I'll bring it
I
up.
think it'd be special.
I actually did I did those signs. I
You
worked
did?
for a
Nice.
sign company in South Bend is what I actually do from 9 to 5. So before I got elected, there was some discussions about the city needing to update the signage, and so our company did those welcomes in Buchanan. So thank you. And I'm sorry that I missed the back of them. I should have put thank you for coming, or see you next time, or something on the back.
Well, don't you think Front Street needs repaving more than the sign?
Well, I do, but I heard him say that we can't do that right now because they're gonna tear it all up to repair those
In
pipes.
23.
Cause that's been my thinking too, dear. In fact, I was gonna go to all the dispensaries and ask for a donation to fix the street. That was my thinking. But I didn't do it.
Yeah, but school goes a group.
This meeting, so I can find out
There's a couple of them.
what's happening. That backed me down a little.
Goes a group.
No kidding, I mean, that's sweet.
I mean, I agree, there are some streets that need work, but again, we're trying to do what makes the most sense. I would hate to pave a street and then have to tear it up next year.
Do you have do you make out a list of the jobs that should be done? And then
Priority.
So,
it
yeah.
down and perhaps this job won't take as long as this one. But you could have both of them if you had the money to do it.
Right.
It would be 10 times the weed job here.
So, yeah, the answer is,
I'm sorry, I'm concerned more about the money. Are we gonna raise our taxes in the city?
no, my goal is to eventually lower taxes. I'm gonna say, I love the city of Buchanan, I love living here, I love the fact that, you know, I love our schools, I love the fact that, I'm helping raise my friends' children as much as they're helping me raise mine, you know, we all keep an eye on each other's kids, and so I love living here, I don't like my taxes. That's the only complaint that I have,
You
is
have
that,
to bring business,
no, exactly, so that's what I was gonna say, so our goal,
because
and
there's the big revenue right there. And then they, later on, we can have our taxes a little lower.
you're exactly right, so that's our goal. Right now, the residents are carrying the burden of our taxes. And we have no industry, we have
That's
no
right.
commercial businesses that are carrying that load for us, so, in the last 2 years, I mean, Redbud Roots alone has added over 150 jobs. And, they've invested millions and millions of dollars in town. And that is going, I mean, getting more of those dispensaries, more of those grow operations. And I don't want it all to be based on marijuana. I mean, we need restaurants and we need other manufacturing. But I think it's coming, it's on its way. And we also need to fill some of these vacant properties with homes so that we're charging property taxes instead of just the city taking care of empty lots.
We need to look into tax breaks, like the solar power.
Well, I think, so, you know, so the goal is to get more industry in here and eventually be able to lower our taxes. One of the things that we're having the city manager do right now, the city commission has asked her to look at our taxes and see what we're paying as a city, so that we can start planning on, you know, how to lower taxes in the future, because frankly, they're pretty high. I'd love to see my tax bill go down, so yeah, I agree with you.
Well, sometimes the people just let their homes deteriorate and hoping that the taxes will go down on their property.
Right, unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way, I mean,
On the property that is to be torn down, do the owners still have to pay their fair share of taxes on it?
well, sure, yeah, I mean, as long as you have a home sitting there, they're paying taxes on it, whether it's in good shape or not.
It's deteriorated.
I mean, the value might go down, but, you know, they're still having to pay their fair share of taxes.
I think some of the deterioration is coming because they can't afford to pay taxes and everything else and fix their home. You know, and that's the same way with some of these buildings. We probably need to look into who are we hiring to build these buildings? You know, I mean, there's no reason.
Well, and we've had some
for it to fall apart.
discussions, as a city commission, we've had some discussions about how do we create, some sort of local organization that would help people in our own neighborhoods, help them when they need help. You know, if someone can't get out and mow their yard and their grass is this high, let's go mow their yard for them. Let's figure out a way to have the community help our own community, and if someone's house needs painted, let's go paint it, you know. And, I think that would go a long way in raising everyone's value of their homes, but it also makes for a nicer community, and I just think it's the right thing to do.
Retire, excuse me, but these people that retire, say at 65, they're full of talent, and they can help so much with the city that it's even people that can't mow their lawn, hey, a retiree, I bet, could go and mow the
Sure.
lawn.
Sure.
Maybe that was his job before.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the great things about Buchanan, I probably don't have to tell you, is the amount of volunteers we have. I mean, we have so many volunteer organizations. It seems like every time we need something, there's an organization there that takes care of it. So I don't see any problem with trying to find a way to create some sort of an organization that would help us take care of our home.
Our time is up. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here today. Thank you so much for interjecting and asking your questions, loving your community, showing your concerns. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and to share with us. We'll be having more classes like this. I'll talk to some of the people you mentioned today. I think we had it last year, but I'll check my, but getting that, the developer in here as well, talking. So for all the purposes to educate ourselves and how can we step in and to help each other outreach within the community. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
I have a question.